All right, I'd like to play a short piece of music now before going into the talk. This will be a piece called Redwood Light, which was inspired by the redwood trees where we used to live in Healdsburg in Sonoma County. And we had a house way out on a dirt road. And one evening I was taking a walk down among the redwood trees. It was raining and I heard a melody, and it seemed to be coming from these ancient trees. And I was really happy when I got back up to the house that I could remember it and write it down. So I'd like to share it with you now and dedicate it to the healing of our forests, to all the ecosystems on planet Earth, which are, some of them are having difficulty now. And knowing that these ancient tree beings perhaps are aware of what's happening in the human world and come to us in our dreams to remind us of an ancient song that we still remember in the marrow of our bones. This is Redwood Light. Enjoy. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us this beautiful morning here in Oroville. And thank you, Charlie, for the beautiful Rumi poem this morning. I really enjoyed that. I think it's so profound, this underlying idea that here we are as human beings on this earth with a physical body. Have you noticed you have one of those, a physical body? And we know that at a certain point, we're going to leave this body. And that's really that's the spirit of Halloween, I think, essentially, is the idea that we are interconnected with those who have gone before, our ancestors, and to remember them, but also that we will be the ancestors of those who come after us. And that gives us an obligation in many ways to do the best we can to pass on a better world to the future generations. I do want to remind you all, while I'm thinking of it here, I just flashed into my mind that this coming Sunday, a week from today, as I understand it, it's the end of daylight savings time, right? So make sure you move your clocks back and don't be late or early or whatever it is. And as I was saying, this idea of Halloween, we're at the end of October, we're moving into the dark times. It's so great. This time, don't you love this time of year, October, and the feeling of the beautiful summer we've had and the winter is coming. And that's very similar to the spirit of Halloween. It's the idea that we're always on the edge of moving into the time when we leave this body. And for a lot of people, I think that's a disturbing thought, that we're going to die. But there's an old saying in Zen that being born is like stepping onto a boat, this beautiful boat with a wide open ocean, and you're heading off on a journey, and you know for sure that the boat will sink. That's the joke. The boat will sink. So no matter what we do, and it's great. I love Deepak Chopra and his sayings that we should really, every day our life's getting better and better, we're staying healthy and so forth, but at a certain point we will leave this body. And so that gives us a reference point. And I think it's really in many ways the foundation of what's in the Buddhist tradition, and also I think in the Christian tradition as well. In the Buddhist tradition, it's called Mahakaruna, which means the great compassion, that we have within us the great compassion, because ultimately, whether we make a lot of money or not, or however our outer circumstances are, we all have the same essential reality that we're just here for a short time on this earth. And in many ways, it's like a musical piece, right? A piece of music. There's, like right now, there's no music coming out of the piano, but there's this infinite potential of who knows what will come out of the piano next, right? It's got all kinds of possibilities. And it's the silence that contains the infinite possibilities. So once we start playing, then it develops a certain momentum, a certain inertia. There's certain chord patterns that emerge and melodies and rhythms that kind of tend to lead to something else. There's tension and resolution. I'll talk about some of those things actually this afternoon in the workshop. I'm going to do a short workshop for about an hour on the healing power of music, because I think music in many ways, we're like music. We are musical. And so we know in a very, like music, we know the power of music in many ways is in the power of tension and resolution, right? There'll be a certain melodic and harmonic and rhythmic tension that will build, and then it resolves. And our lives are the same way. There's tension in waking up in the morning. What's going to happen? What am I going to be doing today? How's it going to go on that job I have to do, or on that relationship I have? So there's these tensions and resolutions. It's very musical. And with health and with everything else. And so the underlying idea is to understand that the power of music, and in many ways it's like life and death, because right now there's pure potential, there's no music coming, then at some point there'll be music, but the music will end. There'll be a point where the piano is quiet again. And our life is like that, right? We emerge out of silence, we're born, we sing our song for a few decades, do our dance for a few decades, and by a certain point, we return to silence. Silence is the infinite potential. But what are we? What is it that we are coming out of silence and returning to silence? I think the Rumi poem that we heard from by Charlie that he read is pointing in this direction, right? Love, spirituality, spiritual awakening. We want to sacrifice everything for that. Really, I think we do. On a deep level, we know that nothing else really matters. No matter how good our reputation is, it could easily be shattered. No matter how money we make, we could easily lose it in the great inflation that we're experiencing right now. Nothing we build up on this earth will satisfy. And so the beloved, which is the divine infinite spirit, says, okay, that's good, but that's not it. You must die, right? What does that mean, really? And it's very profound. The poem reminded me of a story, a true story. This is a totally true story. I have a very, very close friend, Lama Yeshe. He was a Tibetan Lama, but he's an American. He used to teach at Cal State Hayward, and then he gave everything up and he became a Lama, and he did the 3-year retreat and everything. But during his younger years, he traveled a lot. He had his own private plane, and he traveled, and he went all over the world, and he spent a lot of time in Africa, a lot of time in Mexico. He was telling me how he was with this, he was traveling through Mexico, and he was in this little tiny town, and he and his partner, they pulled off on this little tiny restaurant in this dirt road in this little town in Mexico, and they went in and they wanted to get something to eat. They were hungry, and the woman behind the counter made up something for them to eat, and so he had some, and she had put a lot, as they do, I guess, in Mexico. She put a lot of hot peppers in, and it was really hot. And so he started eating it. She was kind of looking at him like, kind of laughing to herself that, once he starts eating this, he's going to really. And so sure enough, he started eating it, and it was like, whoa, it's so hot. And so she started laughing, and then he kind of played it up like, man, this is so hot. And he's going like this. And she laughed harder and harder. And then there was a fan on the counter that was running. He grabbed the fan and he held it like this in his mouth. She laughed so hard, she collapsed on her back and died right there. She died right there. I mean, so it's reminding me of that poem. He said, yeah, she was laughing so much, and she just passed away. Maybe had a heart attack, whatever. And there he was standing there with a hot mouth, and this woman who was just like gone. And but I think it's a very important lesson, because we never know. Like, one of the things that they emphasize a lot in the spiritual teachings is that we never know when will be our last day. She woke up that morning, she had no idea that would be her last day. We never know. And so that's remember that movie, Little Big Man, where he says it's a good day to die. That spirit, he's like, to be ready to leave at any time, that we live our life well, so that we are ready, that we've done what we were here to do as best we can at every moment, and then we can pass on. And I think because the underlying truth is that we will, this is unavoidable, And another old Zen saying, I think, that relates to this, that's very important, that I want to just try to get to before, I know we're running a little bit late here, but it's just the idea, the saying is, if you die before you die, then when you die, you will never die. If you die before you die, then when you die, you will not die. You won't die. And I think, what it's pointing at, again, there's another old saying in Zen, which is, as soon as I open my mouth, evil springs forth. What that means is, if we try to put in words that which is beyond words, we mess it up. I mean, we do our best to kind of point, but anyway, but I think what that's pointing at is the idea that on the spiritual path, like what Rumi was saying in that poem, letting go of the accumulations of our story and all we wanted and all these desires and things, when we can let go, there's a certain dying in that. When we can let go of our conceptions and the programming and all the things that we sort of enforce on the world and on others, and just be, then we open to the great life. We open to actually seeing what's around us. And that takes, I think, the inner work. And what I would really recommend is meditation, some kind of a meditation practice. Because if I wake up in the morning and I just go through the day and I go to sleep, and we never, because we're taught in our society more or less to do that. But if we can just have a discipline where we take time to just sit or just take a walk or something, but be quiet and not be doing something, then our mind, our consciousness will naturally turn back toward its source. It'll naturally do that because we do want to awaken to the truth that we are. And so to let go of of identifying with the story of our thoughts. Because when you start meditating, I had an old Zen teacher, he used to say, when you start meditating, you realize how noisy it is in your mind, right? When we're always busy all the time, we don't really notice it. We're just kind of like, when we just sit quietly and it's quiet and we're sitting there, it's like, man, he said, you realize it's like having a popcorn popping machine and you can't turn it off. Like, how do I turn this thing off? So the idea is, with practice, it's like anything, like playing the piano or my wife, Madeline, she's not here, but her paintings are here. I want to acknowledge her and the beautiful art that she creates. Like in painting, when we practice something, we develop an ability with time. We do develop an ability, whatever we practice. That's why it's good to practice honesty rather than dishonesty. If we practice dishonesty, we get really good at lying. If we practice honesty, we become really good at being honest. Or if we practice watching our thoughts and our mind and realizing we are not our thoughts and our mind, we are the infinite eternal consciousness within which that is arising. And when we leave this body, we will know that. We will understand that. Right now, we don't, because we're identified with this thing, which is not what we are. We are not this body. That's the big delusion, that we think we're this thing. So we have to really understand we are what makes this possible, and we were never born and will never die. And during our daily life, when we, like Paul said, I die daily, that idea, just letting go of the story that we cling to, like this, he did that to me and she did that and I want to do this. If we can let go of that and just be the space within which everything arises, that is freedom. That's real freedom, because ultimately we don't need anything to be happy. We are joy itself when we understand it's our conditioning and really the wounds that have been inflicted on us since we were little kids that have made us contract and try to impress people, all this stuff. So when we can just take time every day to practice listening and being open and not being this body, being the eternal consciousness that was never born and will never die, and then we live. I remember, I'll just close with this little story. When I told you, I think one of the times that when I was right after college, my brother and my brother Ed, we decided not to take over I was going to take over my father's newspaper business. He had a whole chain of newspapers in Boston, outside of Boston. Anyway, we decided not to do that. We decided to walk to California with no money. And we're heading on, and we got as far as Buffalo, and then we walked south all the way to Alabama. And on that walk, we had no money. So we were like, well, what are we going to do? We got into the habit, like going down through Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky. We would find a little church usually and spend the night on the floor of the church. So we found this little church and it was open. And so we went in and we were meditating, and then we got really tired. So I remember we went, but like it was behind the altar, they had classrooms for the Sunday school. It's a little church, but a little tiny town, what you'd call a really redneck little town somewhere in West Virginia. And I remember going in there, we went back there and we went to sleep. We just took a nap, and I woke up, and I guess it was early. It was evening then, and I could hear all these people out in the sanctuary, there. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh no, we're these two strangers in this town." This is back in 1975. If they discover us, back here, they're going to call the police. Who knows what'll happen? We can't let them do that. We've got to just walk out there. And they were all gathering. They're having a service. They were going to singing songs and all this, and having their Wednesday night service, whatever it was. And I said, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And then I said, oh, wait a minute. We don't have to worry. We're not these bodies. And Ed said, oh, yeah, you're right. I forgot. And we're not these bodies. Oh, they can't do anything. Oh, good. So we just walked out, like we're not these bodies, so whatever. And they looked at us like, oh, what are you guys doing here? And then we said, yeah, here we are. And they said, okay, here, sing with us, And so we sang, and they gave us a little money to get some lunch or dinner the next day or whatever. I mean, it went just so beautifully, And I think that's what we discovered. Like on that walk, Jesus said, seek ye not kingdom in heaven. I mean, anything on this earth. But he also said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and everything else shall be added unto you. That idea. And we found that happening. Like the more we just focused on spiritual awakening and we're not this body, the more it was taken care of. That's really how it's set up. I know we need to do our work in the world and make our contribution, but remember the truth that we are what makes this possible. We're not just this thing. And that's, I think, really the deep spiritual significance of Halloween, this connection with the spiritual realm. And we've lost touch with that in our materialistic society, but there is much more to life than just this material level. And we'll know that once we leave our body, we'll get a whole dose and see and understand that. But for now, it's liberating to let ourselves, in a sense, every day die before we die. And then when we die, we will not die. Thank you very much, everyone. Bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tuttle. Excellent job as usual. And now if we can have a couple of people to volunteer to be ushers.